Here we are.
Here we are. Okay, so today we are going to talk about pausing and slowing down and how that actually promotes us to get a little further.
hmm
Um, I'm
Yeah.
Candice. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I also dabble in the spiritual and Reiki. I am a recovering people pleaser and a fellow overthinker. And I am with my co-host today, Sophie.
Hi, Candice. And yeah, so I am very happy to be doing this. I'm really excited because I've got so much to say. Yeah, I'm a holistic practitioner. So I have in a previous life, I worked in IT in the corporate world. We'll probably get into that soon. And now I'm a holistic practitioner. So I do like the massages, Reiki, also a yoga teacher and somatics teacher, which is really where my heart lies now. So that's what I'm harping on to everybody about all the time.
I love that. I'm excited. We were talking a little bit previously about our overlap in what we
Mhm.
do and kind of how we think and live our own lives. You had mentioned wanting to share a little bit more about what somatic actually means and to help
Mhm.
people understand it. I'm hoping to follow along and share with people some of the same message about pausing and slowing down so we can go into the body. I
Yeah.
I like to live in my head, and a lot of my clients also live in the head. So I have a lot of techniques to help us sort through the head, and then it's kind of like then you pick it up because once I would push someone into the heart and body, that's where your expertise really shine because you're helping people be in their body, right?
Mhm. Yeah, and it can be a scary place to be. If we've not really been there before or we've not really learn how to be there, and because so much of life is doing, so
Hmm.
we're not really encouraged in society to just be like we kind of need to learn, we kind of need to be shown and given some tips. So yeah, that's what I'm all about, and it is a little bit of a alien concept for people. It certainly was for me at the
Hmm.
beginning because I'm like, well, I'm fine. I've got it all figured out.
Right.
I know what I'm doing. I know when I need to rest. I know what to do to rest, what to do being the key
Huh?
word. Um, and then actually when, push came to shove, eventually for me, I had no choice but to come out of the mind. I had to drop out of the mind and into the body.
Mhm.
My health kind of forced me to. So I've really experienced it on both sides of the coin. And I know which one I prefer. I want to stay in my body.
Absolutely. You bring up a really great point. I talk to people about it every day. I have my own experience about it. If we don't listen to our body will make us listen. And it's this idea that if we don't learn how to pause for ourselves, our self will pause us. And that can
Yeah.
look like sickness, that can look like, a common cold, but it could also look like something a little bit deeper than that or a lot deeper than that. I have a little bit of experience with that where I'm a go, go, go person. I'm very similar to you. No one really taught me to slow down. And there have been times in my life where my body made me slow down, whether it was like I needed knee surgery or I had pain in my stomach and nobody could tell me what it was. And having to do that internal reflection to stay in my body just saved me time and time again. And I'm sure it will in the future. Um, I don't know. Do you want to share a little bit more about your experience of like, how did you learn to be in your body? What messages maybe pull you out of it? And a little bit more about the idea of, if we don't pause ourselves, our self will pause us.
Yeah, definitely. So something that I try and live by, and the fact that I've been trying to live by it for a few years shows that it is a work in progress, is the phrase or the quote, listen to your body when it whispers so you don't have to hear it scream.
Oh, I love
And
that.
I used to train all the time at the gym. I was similar to like go, 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 always on the go, always doing, always full of this energy, which I
Mhm.
now know I was running on adrenaline, but at the time I was,
Sure.
doing, doing, doing. And with retrospect, I can see that rather than calming my body how can I say it? Rather than calming my actions and allowing my body to slow down slash catch up, meet
Hmm.
it there. Instead, I was doing the opposite. I was increasing my activity to match my nervous system, basically, which was in fight or flight. Like that was just my default. So I was all that was my normal. That's all I ever knew. I was always on the go. I was always um the kind of DIY. Like, well, I can learn how to do that. I'll tile my bathroom. I've never done it before, but it can't be that hard, I'll do it. I'll dig the tree up in the garden. I'll do this. I'll convert a van. I was always doing a lot,
Hmm.
doing well at work, doing well at school, doing well in the gym, training, 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 doing more and more. And then, or not and then, but I went through cycles of some kind of burnout in to varying degrees. Like I always have since I don't say it as a badge of honor, but I would say like my first burnout slash breakdown, I was 15, 16.
Hmm.
And it's kind of just I've been in that cycle my whole life, really. And it becomes quite tiresome. So it was starting to show up more in like physical symptoms, whether that was injuries from the gym, taking longer to recover from things, never sleeping well, digestive issues, so all those physical symptoms, so
Hmm.
many. And quite often the doctor's like, oh, Sophie's at the doctor's again. Oh, what's wrong with her now? Oh, hypochondriac, all this. So, but I knew something wasn't right. I didn't know what, and I didn't know what right ought to be or ought to feel like, but I knew it wasn't that. So, I'd go to the doctors and they'd be like, well, everything's fine. This whole psychosomatic things, which made me think like, am I imagining it? Am I attention seeking? Because it's not encouraged to explore those things. So many examples that I could give about how this showed up for me. I don't even know which one I'd choose. And eventually I would say maybe if I bring it like right up to the present, last year was probably definitely my biggest and most hard hitting and most like catastrophically debilitating burnout slash breakdown. And it was quite scary actually. Like I've had plenty over the years, not as a badge of honor there, but just like I have. And last year knocked them all out of the park. So I had no choice. I had to stop because I couldn't function. And a lot of things led up to that. So it wasn't just I was just doing too much and then this happened. There were lots of contributing factors. But that was what led me like eventually to truly drop into my body because my head couldn't cope anymore. So I couldn't stay in my head any longer. There was nothing left to give. So what I realized was that over the years, I have actually been doing more somatic or in the body practices, usually when I've kind of been in some sort of depths of despair. That has helped me through. And I've not known that that's what I was doing, but looking back, I can see,
Sure.
ah, there's something in this.
Yeah, it's funny that your body knows what it needs, even if you can't intellectually follow.
Yeah, completely. And it's those times where my brain, the logic, and this isn't to say, by the way, that I believe, we should spend all of our time in our bodies and disregard the mind. We need both. We absolutely need
Mhm.
both, but we don't typically have that healthy balance to be able to flick from one to the other. And, we talk about window of tolerance, but I sometimes just like to call it the happy middle ground, where we've got a bit of a buffer, if things are going well, things are going not so well, we can cope. Um, and that comes from being within the body so that we can be in the mind and vice versa, and have it work in harmony as best as we can.
Yeah, keeping both a safe space so you can kind of alternate and be in both whenever
Yeah.
necessary. You brought up so many good points, and I imagine anybody
Did
listening.
I just like scattergun at you?
I
Sorry.
love it. I love it. I love an info dump. I'm sitting here just thinking like, wow, I relate so heavily to you. And I imagine there are plenty of people out there that also relate. I think my first bad burnout was 13 years old and I didn't realize it, but I had so many knee surgeries. I was raised in a very low affectionate family. Emotions are scary to all of them, which is probably why I'm a therapist because I needed to know more. Um, and I was taught go, go, go. And I don't blame my parents for that. That's how they learned to survive. But you brought up this really good point about fight or flight. And when we don't learn how to regulate through survival or the survival mode, our brain creates patterns to maintain it because it feels like that's the only way to keep going. And then we're actually just layering on protective padding that keeps us going and going. And then all of a sudden you're like in a hospital bed because your body can't go anymore. And that started for me at 13. And then I had to stop. And I still wasn't listening because I was like, I didn't understand myself outside of going, going, going. I played on multiple soccer teams. I was in school. I was like going from the moment I woke up to the moment I went to sleep, if I actually went to sleep. And I re-injured my knee before even getting out of the first knee brace because I couldn't stop because that's how I understood myself. And I think society really pushes that on everybody. And please correct me if I'm wrong, but I know in my own lived experience, like as a woman, it's like glorified. You're going to do 100 things and you're going to look cute doing it and you're not going to complain. And that was like that was taught. Like, what do you have to complain about? You have a great life. You're doing all these things. And, my inside whispers are just being tamped down by everybody else's expectations that I thought I had to fulfill. And then we fast forward to I'm going to be 30 years old this year, and I had to step down from my clinical director position because I was too stressed. Luckily, I've started listening to my body, and I realized as much as I love my job, I love myself more.
I love that.
Yeah. And it's not
Yeah.
easy to do because everybody's going to be asking, why would you do that? Blah, blah, blah. And my brain will double down on that. Is this a right decision? Like, how could you do that? What do you, blah, blah, blah. The worst thing's going to happen. And that's where staying in your mind can be somewhat dangerous because that overthinking spiral, that all or nothing thinking, the shoulding, the mind reading keeps us up here instead of pushing us into our heart and our body where like real living happens.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
so I imagine there has to be plenty of other people out there that resonate with both of us in this idea that if we're not already looking for it, our body's slowing us down anyway. So how do we work with our body? How do we overcome the scaries that come with pausing? And how do we elect for it? So
Hmm.
we're not forced into it in the future.
Exactly. I mean, I remember a couple of years ago now, asking for help. Like that didn't come naturally for me. Still doesn't completely, but I'm working on it. Um, Asking for help. I think I was digging the tree up in the garden. And I was thinking, I'm tired. This is going to be a big job. I didn't have the proper tools. I had like literally a rusty blunt saw and a spade, just like hand me downs from my granddad, I think. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And then part of me was saying, just ask
Hmm.
someone, you know enough people. So I did. And somebody, I think I just like put it on my Instagram stories or something. Anyone able to like help me out with this for a bit? And a couple of people replied, um, saying, and very kind of, jovially and in a friendly way, saying, you can do it. You've got this. You can do
Mm.
that yourself. You don't need help. And I remember just thinking, oh God, the one time I asked for help and they literally told me, no, do it yourself. And that it wasn't on them to come and help me, but there's the example that I was, oh, here comes my cat to join in. I was asking for help and we didn't get it. And that's just like symbolic of my life as a whole, really.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, so taking those times to explore, like, how can it feel to ask someone for help? Because I didn't know how to slow down. I didn't know how to not do everything by myself.
Sure.
It was never taught to me. It was never shown to me. It was never demonstrated to me and other people close to me. Um, so I've had to kind of like figure that out as I've been going along. And it's very much a shifting, how can I say it? It's like moving the goalposts are moving all the time for
Mm-hmm.
me. Okay, so sometimes I've got the energy to do something and the capacity to do something, other times I don't. And it's recognizing now within myself when that is. And so the times where I can do things for myself and I'm happy to do things by myself, happily doing it and kind of celebrating it. But then the times where I can't, allowing that and allowing that softness to creep in and that stillness to creep in, knowing that the cycle, like the revolution of that cycle will continue and it will come again where I have the energy to do something. Does that make sense? I
That
kind of
makes a
like
lot of
rambled a bit there.
sense. Please correct
Okay,
me if I'm
good.
wrong. The way I'm understanding that is like knowing that every day the tools you have, like I love this metaphor of you trying to dig up this stump. Like a lot of us are trying to operate with like a rusty spade because that's what was passed down to us from other people
Yeah,
that were only operating with a rusty spade. And we have to be able to kind of check in with ourselves of like, is this rusty spade going to do the job? And sometimes,
yeah.
absolutely. In the moments and the days where this rusty spade isn't going to be the best for us, how do we slow down and kind of take inventory? Do I need to go buy
Mm,
a new tool? Can I borrow a tool from my neighbor or a trusted friend? And
mhm,
can I, like, I don't know, I could go forever on any kind of metaphor, but can I look up a YouTube video to learn how to better use my
yeah.
rusty spade or the shovel I just picked up at the yard sale or whatever?
Mhm.
And I think that really speaks to we have to learn how to learn from our body, from our mind, from our experiences, and know when to ask for help. But we also have to practice it because if you grew up with only using a rusty spade and everyone telling you that's enough, it's
How do you know any different?
right. It's terrifying,
Yeah,
especially like you see your granddad using that rusty spade, and you're like, well, I should be able to do it. He did it.
yeah. See, this is the thing, and I'm glad you say that because those moments where things did feel too much, and so I was like, actually, I do want to ask for help, or I do just want to see if anyone, put my head above the parapet and say, hey, is anyone out there? It felt very risky to me, and from being all up in my head so much, like trying to make sense of the physical sensations that came up
Hmm.
in that moment of I'm really breaking it down here. In that moment of even thinking I want to ask somebody for help, the physical sensations that come up for me or that came up for me in that moment were wild. I remember another thing around the same time because I was in a new house. Well, a new house to me, but it was an old house, and the the ceiling in my bathroom started leaking.
Hmm.
In my bedroom, I should say. And I had a set of step ladders, but they weren't high enough to get me up into the loft to go and see it. Even if I did, I don't know what I would have done. Just looked at it. And so I was thinking, I need to ask my neighbor. I mean, literally, water was dripping into my bed, into my bedroom. And so I was thinking, I need to go and ask my neighbor
Hmm.
if I can at least borrow the ladders that he's got, or if he could even come and have a look.
Hmm.
Oh, I paced up and down, because it was like a Sunday evening, particularly late. I paced up and down. I was up and down the stairs. I was walking around the house. Should I? Shouldn't I? I don't know how. It was ridiculous. And I look back now and think, my God, for all I knew, the ceiling was going to cave in. It wasn't that big a deal in the end. But even at that point, I couldn't ask for help because, okay, there's kind of societal pressures and uh familial or ancestral conditions that I'd inhabited and that had a role in that. But the physical, I want to focus at the minute just on the physical things that were showing up for me in that moment. I couldn't handle them. I
Hmm.
couldn't even put a name to them. I didn't even know that what I was feeling in my body was actually problematic because that was my normal. So what I've ended up doing like over time is through somatic work and stuff is slowly is key, titration is key, to making space so that I can be with even just a part of that physical sensation so I can try and unravel it
Yeah,
and figure out why is it so hard? Like, first of all, what's going on in my body and how can I calm that down and how can I regulate myself so that then I can deal with what's going on in the mind. Do you know
absolutely.
what I mean? Because the logical mind is always going to try and make sense of something, but in the meantime, my nervous system's, 10 steps ahead and it's already responding.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so
You're,
the two are very, very intertwined. Yeah.
yeah, you're bringing up a lot of good points and something that I talk about a lot with my clients and even think about in my own lived experiences. The way we oscillate between the information. And there's a lot of, like, I think of it as stages to healing. And obviously, it's not a straight line, it's not linear. Like, healing is all over the place. But the first step is kind of like being open to observe and to notice, right? So I know for me in the beginning, that kind of physical, visceral reaction to asking for help or saying I need a break or whatever felt so normal. And I thought that was a part of any decision-making process. Eventually, I started being able to be like, okay, I'm really sweaty, I'm really tense. What's my body telling me? What does it need? So it's not just making the decision of what I want to do. It's like, what do I need in this moment? What does my body need? And I mean, I know the
Mhm.
answer now. It's regulation. It's taking a deep breath. It's stretching. It's doing nothing for a little bit. It's shaking
Mhm.
it out. It's crying, whatever it is. That's the first step because that's going to put my brain back online. And I don't think many people realize this. When we are in survival mode, our brain, the prefrontal cortex, the part that allows us to effectively consider our thoughts and feelings, goes offline. I also like
Mhm.
to share that part of the brain isn't fully developed until 25 years old for women and 27 years old for men. So the next time you're pissed off at a teenager, remember they literally do not have the brain power to think effectively. But also give yourself some grace because, like, that 13-year-old you comes up in the moments that you're triggered and scared. And that can be a
Mhm.
nice reminder of like, okay, what is my 13-year-old needing? What is my 2-year-old me needing? Because sometimes
Yeah.
it is a temper tantrum, sometimes it is just a tight hug. And if you bypass that or you attempt to bypass it, you are going to feel worse in your body and you are not going to make a clear decision. And then it's going to build up more and more. So this goes back
Mhm.
to our goal of today's conversation of like why pausing and going slow is so helpful. It is very hard to do in the beginning. I'm happy to say, and I mess it up all the time because I'm human, but I'm at this point in my life where like if I start getting sweaty, that is a great reminder to me to slow down. I'm like, okay, pause. I have missed something and my brain is starting to go offline and I need to put it back online because whatever I'm about to do is probably important.
Yes. Yeah, I love that. And we all have our different cues, don't we? Like the sweating, and it's all part of the stress response, isn't it? Where the heart rate's increasing, the muscles are contract, we're getting ready to run, we're getting ready to
Hey,
fight or flight or whatever it is we need to do. So, yeah, noticing and funny you use that as an example. I've always been less so these days, but I've always been quite a sweaty person. And I
yeah,
think just because I was always ready to go, you know,
absolutely. Yeah.
but didn't recognize it as a a cue or a message from my body. If anything, over the years, I saw it as like a thing to be embarrassed about, something that was
Yeah.
wrong with me or something, and so just I think it's helpful to understand how our bodies can be communicating with us
Mhm.
and, being open to the fact that it's not necessarily what we thought it was
Yes.
before, or, not necessarily, it doesn't necessarily mean what we thought it meant. Is that,
Hmm.
you know what I mean? Um, yeah, and then it definitely comes with practice. You know, like you said, the healing journey or something, it's not linear. It's not like, okay, I can do it now.
Yeah,
I've
right.
I've learned it. I've done it now. It's always going to be a cyclical thing. We're always going to learn, and we're always going to be given the chance to practice it and put it into practice. I always think of it as like studying for an exam
Mhm.
and never taking the test. So that's not going to happen. We're
Right.
going to be taking the exam every day probably. So let's keep practicing. Let's keep studying. Let's keep learning, and let's keep having a go and trying. Um, and the thing I've learned over the years about slowing down and pausing is that, after so many times of just catastrophically burning out, not being able to function anymore, not being able to do the things I enjoyed,
Mm.
um, it was always all or nothing. And what I've learned now, I really have learned the hard way, and I know I'm not alone in that, is that it doesn't have to be that way. And it sounds like such a simple thing to say, but it truly doesn't. And by slowing down a little bit, whether, like you say, it's taking a breath before you pick your phone up, taking that deep breath at whatever point, or pausing before you continue with what you're doing because actually it's going to be an important thing and I'm feeling a bit flighty at the minute, or being able to do that is obviously, well, not obviously maybe, but I'm saying obviously to you because I know that you'll know it is, it's building our resilience, it's strengthening our resilience to these things so that we can do the things we enjoy, so that we can live full lives. And I think for me, I was scared of slowing down for so long because number one, I didn't kind of exist in any other, I didn't sort of have any other identity. So I'm like, I don't know what that's going to look like. Number two, I was scared of not being able to get going again. Because I'm like, if I stop, I'm really gonna, like, my body's just gonna stop, and I've got too much to do to do that. Um, and so I often think of the example of farming, actually. It's out of left field there. And how, farmers, they don't keep planting and sowing in the same field year after
Right.
year after year, season after season after season. The soil needs time to replenish. I think it's called putting it out to farrow,
Mhm.
fallow. I forget the word now, but anyway, I know there's a name for it. They might do it cycle, or they plant different crops in the same field to because different crops require different nutrients, and it all works symbiotically. But some point that field will be left with no crops growing
Mhm.
because it needs time to recharge, to rejuvenate, to be replenished. And why on earth do we think that we don't need the same?
Right. I think that's a really great question because whether it's a societal standard, a family cultural standard, just an internal dialogue of like keep going is
Yeah.
so promoted and so unreasonable. I always tell people like summer Candice and winter Candice are two different people, and I love her both. But anytime I try to get winter Candice on a summer Candice schedule, I am disappointed and ashamed of myself. But I don't have to be if I just stop trying to plant crops in dirt that hasn't rested.
Yes. And
Mhm.
so much of this is something I was going to say before when my cat distracted me, sorry, is that an awful lot of these pressures, certainly for myself, I'm not going to speak for other people here, I put on myself. And
Mm,
it's come from things in the past, and I get that. But yes, so much of it is I set myself this goal of being able to do this thing. I set myself this goal of going to the gym however many times a week. I don't now, by the way, because chronic fatigue and all that, a nice little reminder to me, constant reminder that, like, listen to your body. And I it didn't need to reach this point, but it did. So, here
sure.
we are. But yeah, so much of it, I was putting those expectations on myself. I draw a chart for my week, my weekly plan or my monthly plan or my training plan,
Right.
completely from me, completely from my own brain. Nobody else cared. But if I didn't do those things, oh my gosh, did I beat myself up about it?
Oh, yeah.
Nobody else cared, you
Uh-huh.
know?
Sometimes we're our strongest critic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So now learning to take that pause, and whether that can be a more prolonged, or for example, this afternoon I went back to bed for an hour and a half and I needed that sleep.
Yeah.
I needed it and my body wasn't going to do anything else. or it can be putting your knife and fork down at the end of the meal, taking a breath, and I'm really taking a breath,
Mhm.
not just thinking, okay, that was enough time for a breath to have happened. Really
Yes.
tuning in and taking the breath before standing up and taking the plate out to the kitchen. Those little micro pauses throughout the day, oh gosh, they're so helpful.
Yeah. And I think with practice, part of the key factor of that is without judgment. So
Yeah.
anybody that's going to try their micro pauses after listening to this, judgment's probably going to come up, right? You're probably going to have that thought like, oh my God, did I pause long enough? That's okay.
Yeah.
Acknowledge it, let it go, and come back to the moment and take another breath for good measure because it is
Yeah.
difficult. Um, I this I'm the kid that like my parents didn't ask about my homework, but I always had it done. Like so much so that some of my teachers never checked because they're like, "Oh, I know you did it." And that created so much inner pressure on me. So I imagine there, for all of the adults that were once kids that didn't have someone checking in, do what you can to give yourself a break because you need it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the judgment's going to come. That's okay. That's a part of the process. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I imagine you and I know this. We do this for a living, and I still have judgment. I still have moments where my brain is like all or nothing, all or nothing. You got to go now or
Mhm.
it's done forever. So part of what I do with my clients is not everybody's ready to jump into the somatic of it. And if you're not ready, then your stepping stone is just noticing, like, wow, that's an all or nothing thought. Can I find somewhere in the gray area? And once you get more comfortable with that, push it further into your body. Get ready to
Mhm.
take a break. Take a breath if you can. And if you're struggling with who you are outside of go, 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 talk to a trusted friend, journal about it, get a therapist. There are a lot of
Mhm.
resources out there, and there's a lot in between before that. I love this
Yeah.
idea of just putting your fork down when you're finished instead of hurrying up to like clean up to get on to the next thing.
Yeah. I did it was an Instagram post actually recently about how multitasking really isn't a,
Mm.
a good use of time. How often do we think, right, well, while that's cooking, I'll put the washing on, I'll put the clothes in the washer, and okay, well, while that's doing, I'll just feed the cat, and I'll do, and they don't need to be big, stressful things, but what happens is our bodies it just never gets a break, and we're not designed for this pace of life. Our head might be able to cope with it
Sure.
for all intents and purposes, at least, and logically and intellectually, physically to a degree, we can do all of this stuff. We can keep going. We can multitask to our heart's content. We can have a to-do list of 20 things a day and hit every single one of them. Um, but behind all that is a body going, oh God, can you just give me a break?
Huh?
Because it's just not designed for that. It will perform because that's what it's designed to do. It's designed to keep us alive and to keep going, but it doesn't have this infinite supply of healthy energy reserves. Going back to the farmers fields, like it will eventually run dry. um and we there are things that we can do, like I say, these little micro pauses, even something as simple as opting for a decaf version of a drink rather than the caffeine, allowing our nervous system to just have a little bit of a break, even just an extra hour of not being on. I say hour because maybe that's how long it takes the caffeine to run through. I don't know. But these little things that, we can still get on with our day.
Absolutely.
And if there's a feeling that if I don't have that coffee, I can't get through the day, well, that's a big alarm bell for me.
Oh
And
yeah.
I understand it's not necessarily easy to say, not everyone is in the position for me today where I could just go to bed for an hour in the afternoon. Not everyone has that luxury. However, I do often think, what would happen or what would we do differently if we allowed ourselves to feel that tiredness? We probably wouldn't multitask so much. We probably wouldn't add more things to our to-do list. We might even introduce some pauses that we wouldn't do typically because we would feel the tiredness.
Hmm.
And we don't always, or we view tiredness as a failing and as a weakness and as something to be um hindered by, something that's inconvenient. It's a critical part of our survival. It's a critical message from our body to say, okay, we did a good job there. Let's take a minute and then we'll go again tomorrow.
Absolutely. I like this idea of like you don't have to cure your tiredness, but you do have to consider it.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
went for a walk yesterday, I think, or the day before, and I was thinking about how if we had basically I was thinking about how hard people can be on ourselves, how hard we can be on ourselves. Um, and I was thinking how if we had, say I don't have children, but for example, if somebody has a child, or even if I was babysitting my niece or something like that, and she came home from school or she was in, and she was actually just really tired, and she was saying she was tired. I would like to think that I wouldn't be forcing her to go out and about and do loads of things and keep
Sure.
going, keep going, keep going. I would probably be like, all right, well, why don't you just have a rest? Why don't you just do a bit of colouring in? Why don't you do something quieter instead of going out and playing on your bike? Or, why don't you take it easy? Or I tell you what else came to me. It was about the compassion that people have for children typically, but also for animals.
Mhm.
So I've just come back from a holiday, and one of the pictures that I took was of a donkey being used in like a with a cart, and it looked pretty tired and it looked a little bit on the thin side and things like that. And a few people were like, oh, oh the donkey. And I thought we can be that donkey as well sometimes. And the compassion that we show to that donkey, if you own that donkey, you'd probably give it the day off tomorrow, and you'd give it a bit of extra food and you might put an extra blanket over it at night, give it a little bit more TLC, a few more cuddles. Whereas for ourselves, we'd be cracking the whip, still saying, just do that bit more.
Right, just a little bit more. You got this. You can rest when you're done. You can rest when it's perfect.
Yeah,
And I think
yeah.
that ties beautifully into this idea that when we are triggered, when we're sweating and we're tense or whatever, that's probably a younger version of us that learned to survive through that. And if we can
Hmm.
give ourselves that compassion that we would need at 13, or we would give our 8-year-old niece, or we would give to, a sad-looking donkey, we would be considering ourselves in a new way that would allow us to actually pause.
Yeah. And the consideration, like you said before, for people who are very much in their head and they're not familiar with how it can be to be in their body, having that consideration and just noticing without the judgment, without the labeling or the analyzing or the trying to change or trying to fix anything, just considering what's happening
Yeah.
is a huge first step. It's
Yes.
huge because so often the consideration isn't even there because we're too busy.
Yeah.
you
The
know?
first step is often the biggest one. But once you
Yeah.
start practicing that, some of the other things will begin to be a little easier.
Mm. I think it was basically how having the space to notice gives us a chance to like learn how our body communicates with us. I know what I was going to say. Yeah. So noticing somatically what shows up within the body, when we start to notice it more and more, then between sessions or just in our day-to-day life, we start to notice it again. We kind of go, oh, there's that thing that I noticed.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
then it becomes over time, and it is a thing that takes practice and it doesn't always happen immediately or every time. But over time, it becomes that little bit harder to say no.
Yes.
No, we're
Yeah.
not going to stop now. No, no, I am going to keep going. It basically it becomes more difficult to ignore those messages that our body's given us because we have the awareness. And then we can make an informed choice. Is it appropriate for me to go and take a rest right now? Well, no, because I'm at work and I need to keep going. But I am going to cancel the plans that I had for this evening and I'm going to have an easy evening. So we can just make that more informed choice.
I love that. I say that all the time to my clients. I have a lot of like overachieving type A people pleasers that are like, "What's my homework?" And I'm like, "Your homework is to observe." And they're like, "Well, what do you mean?" I'm like, "Just observe your thoughts." If I teach someone what all or nothing thinking is, I'm like, "Trust me, you're going to see it a lot in the next 2 weeks." And they always come back and they're like, holy shit. I do this all the time. I'm like, I know. And now you
A
know
big
what to look
spreadsheet
for.
full of it.
Right? Yeah, they're like, here, here's the
That
time
was
stamp
me,
of every time I got it.
color coded within an inch of its life.
Absolutely. And, we're talking a lot about pausing being the first step. And I think to a certain
Yeah.
degree, it absolutely is. But like a pre-step is just giving yourself permission to look for something new, to learn something new, explore and get
Yeah.
curious with your body, because you can use all the information you have right now. When you get new information, you'll make a new decision. Like you were saying, like, okay, I can't take a nap right now, but I know I have plans later on this, tonight. I can make a new choice. I'm going to cancel or reschedule them. And that is not easy to do if you're not used to it. It will take practice. I don't expect everybody to go out and cancel their plans tonight. But my hope is that eventually you get there if it's what you need.
Yeah. Yeah. And recognizing what kind of pause and what kind of stillness or rest is required, because it can take many different forms. Maybe somebody would benefit, and this is like it's going into slightly different territory, I guess. So maybe somebody would benefit from going out and socializing.
Sure.
Maybe, depending on if they're burnt out through hypervigilance and fight or flight and overdoing, overthinking over everything, or have they dissociated and they've just like kind of zoned out and they're just not online at all anymore, and actually having some kind of invitation to come back up. It
Yeah.
doesn't need to be like, okay, so I've got to go to a rave, or anything mega
Sure.
extreme, but just something maybe, um, I don't know, who knows what it could be, but something that brings them up. So I think this is another thing that people can often think that rest equals doing nothing or
Mm,
pausing equals doing nothing, and that's not necessarily the case. I think it's very individual. And
absolutely.
you used the word earlier about regulation, and um again, once we become curious about exploring this kind of thing and how things show up in our bodies, then we can recognize that, oh, I'm sweating. Okay, I should probably slow down a bit. Like,
Mhm.
okay, I've not heard anything that person just said for the last 5 minutes. I should probably do something to do a kind of different type of breathing pattern for a few breaths to bring myself back up into my body and into my mind. And
Mhm.
then we can make the choices and do the activities that we enjoy doing, but do the right ones at the right times
Right.
rather than doing them because we've always done it, but actually we feel depleted after it. Um, yeah.
And learning what right means for you, because what you
Yeah.
need in this moment is going to be different than what I need in this moment, and what I
Mhm.
need in this moment will be different what I need tomorrow. And I think
Yeah.
that's another difficult concept to grasp is like I always say, in therapy and life, whatever, we're all just trying to write our own owner's manual, right? Like I am in this body, how does it work? And
Yeah.
I have a lot of people, myself included, try to figure it's like I cracked the code. If I do this, this, and this every day, I'm gonna feel good. And it will for a little bit. And then winter you comes out and you're like, I can't do that. And
Hmm.
letting yourself ebb and flow in what's right today might not be right tomorrow, and
Yeah.
always being open to explore new. I'm constantly learning new ways to regulate. I just found out like last year that I really like to vocally stim. And I didn't know that about myself for a really long time. And so now when I give myself permission to just repeat things over and over and over again, I feel so good. Obviously, I can't do that at work or in certain situations, but when the moment hits and it's right, I'm gonna allow myself to do it. And
Hmm.
I know for people that don't know what a vocal stim is, it's just a self-regulatory, often repetitive kind of movement. Or for me, vocal is actually verbally saying something over and over again. Explore a great way in my idea of exploring and learning a little bit more about like what that inner child needs, what that survival mode brain me needs is go back to childhood. Children know what they need. I verbally stimmed all the time. It just annoyed all the adults around me. And so I like got bullied into not doing it and I accidentally rediscovered that. But, like the rocking motion, the movement of your body, kids know what
Hmm.
their body needs. Society just often teaches it out of them. So
Yeah,
I think that's another good point for anybody listening. Like, if you don't know where to start, ask somebody that knew you as a kid, think back to things that you did. Like there's gonna be some movements that you like to do, there's going to be activities you like to do, and that's a nice stepping stone if you're not ready to learn about like breath work or movement
yeah,
or thought patterns. So yeah, I think
yeah.
there's so there my hope is that anybody listening has something that they can take away because we are throwing out gems here. And there are so many different
So
things
many.
to just, if something resonates, just start and explore it. There's no right
Yeah.
way to do it, and there's a lot of options.
Some things that I, just to throw some other suggestions out that worked for
Yeah.
me. There's all these like coloring books for adults these days, like the meditative and the mindful coloring books, and they're beautiful. These like, really intricately drawn, whatever they may be. They stress me out so much. Oh, give me a kid's coloring book any day where it's just like a big mushroom house
Yes.
or like an ice cream cone, and that's it. And I don't need to worry. I don't need to be very precise, and I can just scribble. And I did art at uni. I've all my earliest memories are colouring in and painting and things like this. So I've always done that. But give me a kid's colouring book and I will be happy as anything. And another thing is reading for those who like to read or maybe listening to audiobooks or something, children's stories. They're so much more enjoyable for me to listen to, and you can just kind of lose yourself in the story and the whimsical sort of make believe innocence of it, because going in for these like drama and crime and murder mysteries and all that, I've got enough going on in my life,
And I know like there are so many people, I have some good friends that love like murder. They love listening to true crime. And this is not me knocking them, but I just wonder how much of that is perpetuating that cycle of survival mode that's so familiar
Because
versus,
the brain doesn't know the difference.
right. Your brain's like, oh,
If you see,
I know
I
how to
know
do
it's
it.
on Netflix, we're fine. Like,
Right,
no,
right. Like, oh, this is terrifying and I'm in fight or flight. Great. That's super comfortable and familiar. I know what to do.
Netflix and chill. It's like, oh my God, I'm under
Right.
threat.
That's so funny.
Yeah, very true though. And again, they're the kinds of choices that we can be making. And it doesn't have to be, for some people they do enjoy them. I used to, I don't anymore,
Mhm.
probably because I now recognize what goes on within my body when I watch these kind of things. Um, well, maybe sometimes thinking, I've had a tough day. I'm not gonna watch that like I typically would, or I'm not gonna fall asleep to that.
Oh my
You
gosh.
know?
Yes. Yeah. And
Oh,
I'm
these
sure we
poor
can,
nervous systems.
oh, I know. I'm sure we could continue talking about it, but like,
Yeah.
if I'm going to watch TV, if I'm going to spend 45 minutes of my time, it's not going to be something that's going to activate me. It just took a while for
Mhm.
me to make that choice confidently because people will get
Yeah.
annoyed with you. Like, what do you mean you
Yeah.
won't watch this action thriller? What do you mean? I'm like, I don't need that. I have enough chaos in my own life. I don't need to invite it in on the side. And
Like I used to listen to Tupac. I did a very good performance of some of his songs, if I may say so myself. But now I find it really hard to listen to because it's just too, I'm not just Tupac, but that kind of thing. I'm very, very aware and much more like picky and particular about what I consume, whether it's food, drink, caffeine, sugary stuff, whatever it might be, fast food or whatever. Um, the music I listen to, the words I listen to. It's not to say I live this like idyllic Disney
right,
life, not at all, but I try to protect my precious nervous system that's working so flipping hard to keep me alive because that's its only job,
right.
and if I'm just piling on more and more for it to work through that's unnecessary, actually, you know. And for me, and obviously this is different for everybody, but for me, my nervous system had a lot to deal with from a very young age, so it doesn't have much of a buffer
Hmm.
to you know to play about with. So I know I have a very sensitive nervous system, and I don't. That's not a weakness, and that's not a failing, and it's not something to be fixed. I've now come to realize
Hmm.
it's something to be worked with because it keeps me so alive and it protects me so well that as long as I'm working with it as an ally, then I'm good. You
Yes.
know, we're good to go.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, right, your nervous system is doing its job to keep you alive.
Mm.
Give it some time to rest, listen to it. It knows what it's talking about. And it doesn't, watch, it's spooky season. Watch something scary if you like that. You will not, I will never volunteer to watch a scary movie. I see and feel enough scary stuff in my body every day, and that's good enough for me. So, and like everybody in my circles, we joke around like, I'm just gonna watch Gilmore Girls again. I'm just gonna watch New Girl
Oh,
again.
don't.
Like, well, yeah, because
Downton Abbey. Yeah.
right, we know what to expect. There's no jumping
Yeah.
out. Our nervous system can stay regulated. It's past the first time of watching them and all of the plot twists, but once you know what to
Yes.
expect, it is actually soothing. And all of it needs harmony. I can't only
Yeah.
watch Gilmore Girls, but I also can't only watch TV. I have to do a bunch of other things. So
Yeah.
I'm sure
I
I
have
think
a
that's the next one. We could continue talking about that forever.
yeah, I mean I was just gonna throw in that I have so I we talked about it before this call. A freebie that I created was very much based on a lot of this, which is why I'm going to mention it now. And it's all stuff that I do and I have been doing for a long time, day to day, just within my daily life, and benefits so much. And it's quick. I hate the term quick fix because I don't believe there's such a thing really as a quick fix. However, I did use that name for this quick fixes, and there's somatic things. So it's like I think there's something like 20 or 25 different quick fixes. And it's all things like, you know, if you do breath work, maybe consider the kind of breath work that you're going to do today if you're feeling a bit tired. Or, you know, when you're having a wash, feel the water on your face and notice, is it warm? Is it cold? Oh, I felt a drip on my ear. You know, things that we're doing anyway when we're standing waiting for the kettle to boil.
Mhm.
There's something about, you know, putting your hands on the side or something I forget now what it is, but things that we can incorporate very, very easily into our day-to-day life without needing to be like, oh, I need to go and meditate for an hour, or I need to completely change my lifestyle in order to be calm now, or because that's not realistic, you know. And as we've touched on, a lot of a lot of people, and I've certainly been there many times, are either not ready to, aren't aware that it would be helpful, just don't really know how to go about it. You know, it can be such a big change. So there are so many actionable and um, achievable changes or just choices, not changes. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So, what was it? Yeah, I think I was saying how there are loads of ways that we can introduce little pockets of calm, little pockets of pauses, like pocket-sized pauses, we could call it, within our day without needing to completely derail ourselves or, you know, take the foot off the gas kind of thing.
Yeah.
If we're not ready to do that or if it's not appropriate to do that just yet, you know, there's so much we can do. So I'm happy to share the link to this freebie because
Okay.
it's stuff that I do every day myself, genuinely. And so I thought, well, I'll put it together and maybe someone else can benefit from it. So yeah, there's lots of ideas in there.
Yeah, I think that's great. We'll have that link below. For people that want to explore their thought patterns in tandem with the somatic pockets, I have created a little quiz to help people identify their number one um, like incongruent thinking patterns. So the thought that often leads us to survival mode because it keeps us from pausing. And I made a little workbook to go with that. I actually today made an inner child challenge that I'm working on. So it's like, choose your own adventure, but return back to that younger you. So I didn't actually expect to talk about it today, but I do think that that's a great resource for anybody that wants to learn how to give that compassion to yourself, starting with that younger
I'd
you.
love to look at that even just for myself. Yeah.
Yes, it's so fun. And it's a bunch of stuff's on that from like blowing bubbles in your chocolate milk to going on adventure outside. Um, all of those links are going to be down below. And,
Mhm.
we are constantly coming up with ideas and putting out a lot of resources. So following along, I'll put our socials in the links there.
Mhm.
If anyone listening to this resonates, you are in good company. Follow along with each of us. We have a lot of great things to share.
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway that I hope anybody listening to this or watching this will have is that it is possible to pause without stopping completely.
Absolutely.
I have so many people who come into my for massages and things, and they're like, I'm just so tired, but I can't stop. And I would love for people to begin to at least consider that it's okay. It's okay to slow down because by slowing down, we can keep going.
Yes.
That's the biggest thing for me.
That's a great takeaway. I echo that. I also hope people just know they're not alone. We're here experiencing it and we do this professionally. And I always remind people that I work with, like, this is my job. And it also comes up in my life. We
Mm,
all have our own version of that. It's not to dismiss anybody's experience, but it is to remind that there's a community in it. And even though it's
yeah.
scary, reaching out can go a long way and just knowing you're not alone.
Yeah, I love that.
I love
There's
it.
so much more to talk about, but yeah, I've
Yes,
loved
stay
this
tuned.
conversation.
It has been awesome talking with you. I think we shared a lot of great tips, and I'm excited to do it again soon.
Me too. Thank you, Candice.
Okay.